Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So guys, some of you know I did a short the other day. I guess I'm really late to that party and I haven't done any shorts on YouTube. So now I know that I have to orient the camera the opposite way so I don't end up sideways. I'm sorry. But anyway, I wanted to elaborate on that short today, and it was about dealing with this thing that people say. I'm just going to talk about where I think this is coming from, this line, which is, we're all going to get this. And I want to elaborate a little bit on that because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. So forgive me, I might get on my soapbox just a little bit, but more importantly, I just want to offer my rationale for why I reject that statement. And I also want to answer a couple of questions that have come up, namely, I've been asked a bit whether I no longer recommend KF94s or KN95s, and I do want to talk about that after. So yeah, so stay tuned for that as well. So this concept, we're all going to get this. In the short, I just said, here's my answer to it. If I really need to come up with a one-line answer, my answer would be how many times? Because we all know now that we can get COVID multiple times, especially with the current variants circulating around and the current kinds of vaccines and boosters that we have available. Now, some of this might change. I personally really wish we could have some sort of a program similar to Warp Speed for like nasal vaccines, because I think that the vaccines that work at the point of entry and work on something that is not the spike protein, but rather some part of the virus that does not mutate, I think that's going to be the ticket. But it seems like without something like Warp Speed, those are going to be subjected to the usual and customary kinds of slow pace that we see with vaccines and other kinds of medications. So I'm hearing now it's a couple of years off. So that's a little bit discouraging. I hope somebody does something about that. But anyway, yeah, with the current vaccines and the current variants, and you people can get COVID multiple times and you're just not protected all that long. So I'm sure those of you who watch my channel are fully aware that there was a study that came out a few weeks ago. It was published and it came out of the VA system. So it was a huge study. And actually, Dr. Bean really tweezed it apart on his channel. The only thing he didn't mention that I think is important, and I went back to answer this question, was what was the mean age in the study in the population? Because oftentimes a VA is kind of an older, skewed population sample. It was around 60, but nonetheless, the findings of this study and the take-home lesson was the same, which is that your risk of all-cause morbidity goes up relative to the number of times that you have gotten COVID. So there is a direct relationship between the number of times you get infected, subsequent infections, and the likelihood that you're going to have any kind of morbidity, mortality. So think long haul. So if you've had COVID once versus twice, if you had it twice, you've got twice the risk of having long haul. If you get COVID 3 times, you have 3 times the risk of getting long haul. So, this concept that, well, we're all going to get this. Yeah, how many times? How many times do you want to get this? Maybe we are all ultimately going to get this. I guess I'd rather get it later rather than sooner, not only because of the reason I just stated, because how many times do I want to, but I think the later we get it, the more likely we know more. Maybe we'll have more therapeutic options. Maybe we'll have better vaccine options. I'm just not willing to like throw my hat down and, I'm just not willing. Well, I guess that's not the right analogy. Toss in the towel. That's the right phrase. So yeah, I'm not going to toss in the towel on this and say we're all going to get this. And, that's kind of what I think this is. What I was trying to think to myself, why does it irritate me so much when people say this to me? When somebody says, well, we're all going to get this. And I really sat down because I very rarely have such an emotional response to something that's seemingly so benign. Okay, you feel that way, I feel this way, that's fine. We feel differently about it, no big deal. But I really tried to sit down and think and dig deep and tweeze apart what was bothering me about this statement. And I realized it's a couple of things. One is, I think it's a mild form of gaslighting. And by the way, I'm going to do a video coming up sometime soon about medical gaslighting. So if anybody has any suggestions or any experiences, please put them down in the comment box in terms of helping me inform that video. But nonetheless, I think that this is a little bit of gaslighting. It's kind of like when somebody doesn't like how risk adverse you are, or how, that you're maybe doing better than they are. Maybe you're doing better at this than they are. And they don't like to see that. And it makes them feel kind of ill at ease about themselves and what they're doing or not doing. And so then they say, well, we're all going to get this. Kind of throws it in your face a little bit, Um, the other thing I don't like about it is even if it's not coming from sort of malintended place like that, I do think it's a little bit of giving up and tossing in the towel. And I don't really look back at my life and think about any examples where giving up on something was really that good an idea. Now, changing a situation, I'm sure we've all changed that. We've left jobs, we've left something for something better. We've left something to better our circumstances, leaving one job and going back to school and getting a better job and things like that. But just giving up on something in general, I don't think is really well-informed and good advice. So I think that at a very minimum, this stems from just sort of a giving up and maybe a helpless feeling. And we're not helpless. And it's really important to know that we're not helpless in this. And worse off is when it's a little bit of gaslighting and I'm just trying to remind myself when I feel that, if first of all, it might not be that I'm not inside of somebody else's head, but if it is, if I feel like I'm sensing that from somebody, I just try not to take it personal anymore and just realize I'm doing what I think is best for me. And if somebody else doesn't want to do it or they want to gaslight me, for that, I mean, hey, who am I to say? So that's sort of where I'm coming from when I say I've just gotten this one line answer, which is how many times? We're all going to get this how many times? And by the way, there was a good article that just came out in one of my journals, and I wish I could remember which one it is. I'm going to try to put it down below in the description box. I'll try to find it again. It's about children. And for those of you who think, or people, anybody who thinks that COVID is benign in children, that's just not true. That was an old narrative, and I think it's largely a political narrative, but it's just not true. Maybe most children do fine. Most everybody does okay if you're only looking at the 4, 5, 7 day course of the acute illness. It's what comes after. It's all the potential morbidities that come after the long haul, the autonomic dysfunction, blood clots, or whatever form the long haul might take for any individual person. That's all the iceberg that's down under the waterline that we can't see. And it turns out that children who have had COVID have a much higher incidence of all kinds of morbidities than children who haven't had COVID. So again, how many times do you want your kids to get COVID? Now, I know we all live in the real world and there's only so much we can do. So let me just address that as well. I do hear people say things like, well, there's only so much you can do. Yeah, that's true. There's only so much we can do. But one thing you can do is you can put on a respirator for sure. You can put on an N95 in almost any situation. Now, for those of you who are like in the same boat as me and you've got adult children, and sometimes I use the word adult really loosely, I've had to negotiate a little bit with them. They don't answer to me anymore. They're out on their own, but the way I address that, and I've heard people put this, I've read people's comments in the Facebook page about this where they're dealing with what they'd like their adult children to do versus what their adult children really do. And I get it that these kids are, they're in that stage of their lives where they're getting situated in jobs and professions or they're dating and, they need to kind of be out there and they don't want to be too weird and everything. And I get that. I'm not thrilled about it that my kids won't wear an N95 in every situation, but I've gotten them to look at it like this. There are certain situations where there's absolutely no social cost. So if you feel you must go to a gym, I can't even imagine walking to a gym nowadays, but my daughter goes to a gym in her neighborhood. Wear an N95, she does it. Thank you. If you're going into a grocery store, there's no social cost to wearing an N95. So if you really just can't bring yourself to do this all the time, do it some of the time and think of the times where there's really no social cost. Now, I'm not personally thinking like that because I'm wearing an N95 pretty much anytime I'm around people indoors. And there's certain indoor situations I'm still avoiding because frankly, there's no benefit to me and there's only risk and I don't like them anyway, like grocery shopping. I don't know if I'm ever going back in a grocery store, guys. I really like curbside pickup. And if the pandemic never happened and curbside pickup did, I think I'd be enjoying it just as much. So, there's some things I don't do because I don't gain anything from them. But this is just something I've thought of that maybe you can help somebody around you who's sort of got this toss in the towel attitude when in fact maybe they could be doing some things and they'd still be safer than if they did no things in terms of mitigation. More importantly, in terms of mitigation, the N95 has emerged the clear winner for right now, arguably more so than boosts. I'm not saying don't get boosted, please get boosted. I'm double boosted. But right now, the N95 has emerged the clear winner, okay? Because the truth is we can all still get sick from this thing. Maybe you're not going to get a severe case. I don't buy this whole narrative that that's what the vaccines were for. They absolutely were not for that. Early on with the early variants, the vaccine was really to prevent infection in the first place. I still think these are great vaccines and everything, but they're not preventing the infection overall, except for a very short period of time after the boost. So you can still get infected, and then we're back to the discussion about, okay, you won't get severe disease or you won't die. I didn't think I was going to die anyway, but do I want to take the risk of getting autonomic dysfunction or cognitive dysfunction, shrink my brain matter, and all kinds of things that we know are really happening. And this long COVID is the next public health crisis that's looming in our future. And politicians people listen mostly to politicians, unfortunately. They think in 2 and 4 year cycles, okay, because that's all an election cycle is. So, yeah. I just think that there's no substitute. So that brings me to the question somebody asked me, do I no longer recommend a KF94 or a KN95? And I just want to clarify, I never recommended a KN95 or a KF94. Now, if I had to choose between one of those two, I personally would opt for the KF94. I just think the shape of them makes for a better fit than the KN95 with that crease down the middle. The reason I don't like either one of them is because it's been studied that ear loops versus head strap, you just can't get that kind of a fit, the same kind of a seal with an ear loop. So even though they say 95 and 94 in their names, by definition, they allow up to 10 or 11% leak because this is coming from the problem given that they have an ear loop. Okay, so you can't make a design like that that won't be have to allow for some kind of leak. So furthermore, early on, I did a video very early on in the pandemic when N95s were not available yet to the general public, and I still didn't recommend these because the FDA was sort of testing some of the ones that came over from China, sort of randomly, and found that they weren't standing up to the standards that they were supposed to meet. I doubt that's an issue anymore at this point, and especially not with the KF94. But I don't see the reason to use them. Yes, I agree with the hair. Somebody said I don't like to have my hair all the way up. Yeah, how often do you see me with my hair down? That's because I'm used to knowing that I have to put on an N95 at some point during the day. There is the ready mask, the stick-on. I use that in certain situations where I want my hair down. I put a surgical mask over it just so I don't look too weird. There's also the option of wearing those for something like a haircut. But other than that, yeah, I just deal with the fact that that means I have to put my hair up or I have to pull my hair out from under the straps or something like that. But I don't see the reason to go to a KF94 or a KN95 when the N95s are readily available and there are good ones, and some of them function up to like N99 pretty much. And I've reviewed several of them on the channel. I'm going to link the playlist. So I hope that answers that question because I think that's really important. I'm not faulting you if you decide to go ahead and use one of those others. Arguably, they're better than a cloth mask or a gaiter or whatever it is, but I prefer the gold standard, which I think of as the N95. So let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if anybody else feels, is this just me, or do you feel like you're kind of getting gaslighted with this concept? Well, you can only do so much, and we're all going to get this. So I'm hoping that it's going to be a long time. And for those of you who have gotten this, and I know some of my viewers have, all of them without exception that I can think of who have communicated with me are doing well, and I hope you continue to do so. And I hope that you continue to share with us because we can all learn from your lessons. There might be some lessons there, and if I'm so unlucky as to come down with COVID, I certainly will share that with everybody and share whatever lessons I learn about it. But so far, I'm doing well, and I'm very grateful for it, and I'm trying to help everybody that I can to do well also. So let me know if this was helpful, and until next time, be well. Bye-bye.